Hello and welcome to another episode of New Kinship. This is a fun conversation. This is David Frank, and I'm here with TJ.
Hi, everyone.
And our guest today is Reverend Zachary, who is a Episcopalian priest. Welcome, Zachary.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here. Good to be with you guys.
Yeah, so Zachary is do you prefer Zachary or Reverend?
You can call me Zach. Now, I'm on the Diocese of Long Island, which uses father a lot, so you can call me Father Zach, but just call me Zach. That's good.
Zach.
Okay, Zach. And yeah, so Zach from Long Island, a priest out there, and has a just unique perspective that we've not come across in the Side B world very often, where he's a gay priest who is in a predominantly Side A context and was Side A previously and is now holding a Side B perspective, which for those who are a little new to the language is just moving from an affirming of same-sex marriages to holding a traditional sexual ethic that affirms male and female marriages and different roles for gay people in God's church.
As a brief summation.
More to it. So I'm just trying to give very brief little note to those who are like Side A, Side B, view what? TJ, is there anything you want to add as a little more of an intro?
Yes, thank you. I was excited to connect with Reverend Zach because we have a mutual friend, I should say, first of all, that kind of connected me to him. And I was like, yes, thank you, our mutual friend, because I've been wanting to find these stories of people who have moved from Side A to Side B. I think between the two schools of thought at two positions, there's traffic between the two. But I think most of the traffic is from Side B to Side A. But the other lane does exist, even though you might be surprised if you didn't think about it. And so I'm happy we found someone who's willing to talk with us. So yeah, thank you, Reverend Zach. Happy to be here with you.
Zach, can you just give us a little bit more about your life? How old are you? When did you first think of yourself as gay or same-sex attracted? And when did theological considerations, how did those start to shape?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm 35 years old. You know, it's funny you just said how old you are, and we don't really ask people how old we are in this culture. So that's like, sorry. I've been asking people how old they are, just like forthright, and people are like stunned. I was
like, oh, I'm not asking for it. I'm just like general. Are you in your 50s and your 30s?
Right. No, it's great. No, so I'm 35, born in 1989. So go everyone born in 1989. I think there's like a strong culture out there of 89ers. Probably thanks to Taylor Swift. No, anyways. Yeah, I'm originally, so it's funny, I'm not from Long Island. I'm originally from Michigan. I was raised outside of Detroit in the northern suburbs, Royal Oak, for those who are in the know out there. I grew up in a pretty suburban, middle-class, white, Roman Catholic household. And this kind of might make more sense why I'm kind of describing it this way. I grew up on a busy street. I grew up in the throes of car culture and grew up in one of the largest Catholic parishes in the Detroit area, a National Shrine of the Little Flower, beautiful Art Deco church, and went to their schools. I went to 13 years of Catholic school. Yeah, so I was raised pretty, and I would say moderately Catholic. We went to church every Sunday, went to Catholic school, nothing too traditionalist, but church was part of our lives. I'm the fourth of 5 children, and of 2 devoted parents who just happened to celebrate their 43rd wedding anniversary this year.
Wow.
And so they are such a bulwark, such a presence in my life, and such a testimony to the fact of marriage, of what marriage is, and the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears you put into it. And they now have 11 grandchildren, so it's a big family. My dad's the last of 6, so there's plenty of cousins out there. My mom's one of 3, so I definitely have a big family system network out there, and across the nation as well. So, yeah, the first, it's really hard to describe when I first felt attractions. I really don't remember having a lot of attractions as a kid before, puberty. I remember there's this great memory I have. I knew I have 3 older sisters and a younger brother. So, and I don't want to get too Freudian or psychoanalytic. But I just remember being more able to like be friends with girls more than with boys. Now that isn't to say my oldest friend was a boy, Joey, God rest his soul, and we hung out. We were great friends. But I remember, I think it was like the third grade or something. We were on the playground, and I'm just like running across the playground, going, "I betray the boys! I betray the boys!" Like I was like, there was like some fight. Like I had to like choose sides of boys and girls, and I knew like I'm gonna be on the girl side. And I didn't do I was one of those boys that I didn't play kickball. I just wanted to sit on the sideline. I wanted to read. I remember fourth grade, there was like a reading club during lunch every other week or something like that. So I was doing that. I remember the biggest kickball like play I got was catching a ball, and all the boys were so excited for me but like for the most part, I was kind of shy. I was kind of confronted with this fact that as an outgoing person I'm actually really shy. And I have anticipatory kind of anxiety about forming relationships sometimes. So, but then puberty hit. And yeah, that's probably when I first started noticing my attraction was more towards other boys and in my school. And being Catholic and growing up, that's when, how do I talk about this without talking about the dark side of all of this? Because when I hit puberty was when the Catholic sex abuse scandal started to come out. It was the beginning of the internet, beginning of the ability to have access to a lot of bad stuff on the internet. And I was exposed to all of that. And yet at the same time, I still had these, it wasn't because of that I had, I knew I had these attractions. And so you just kind of live with it. And I went to a pretty like liberal Catholic high school, actually. Like the teachers were very liberal. And what's funny, then the church, though, that I was connected to, as a diocesan school, was very conservative. And so this juxtaposition. And there were, I had a class of 75, so there wasn't a lot of, my brother's class, which was 2 years below me, was 99, which was like the largest class in like 40 years or something like that. So it wasn't a big school. We all knew each other. There wasn't a lot of bullying because there was some, but there wasn't really a lot because all of our moms and dads knew each other. It wasn't, and some of our moms and dads went to, I went to the same high school my dad went to. I went to the same schools my dad went to. So a lot of our parents went to school together themselves. So, and I was pretty deeply closeted. I just was. It wasn't anything I wanted to do. I think I had a girlfriend for like 2 weeks, and I didn't know what to do with her because I didn't know how to date. I didn't have any money. I didn't have a car until I was 19. So, and I just wanted to study. I just wanted to be with my friends. I did Model United Nations through the public schools, and that was my like big extracurricular. So. Yeah, high school just happened. I just got through it best as I could. It was, it was a fine time. I wasn't too harassed or anything like that. By college, I had my own spiritual journey. I always recognized God in my life as someone who loved me. This eternal being that did care for me and love me. And so I never felt any sort of distance or any sort of hate. And that was fortunate. That's not what a lot of LGBTQ people experience. And even in the community, in the family, my family, and in the community around me, there wasn't a lot of like homophobia or outward bigotry. The worst of it was the conservative Catholic media that my father would consume, which basically argued that it was the homosexuals' fault for the Catholic abuse scandal. That was really hard to stomach. But my father was never like that. My father, he's a very good and generous man, and he never had any sort of verbalizing of any sort of hate in that regard. But then college came, and I was my own person. And I went on a spiritual journey. But I was also very into my studies, despite what the grades might say. I was still, I still loved it. I love learning and I love school. So I focused on that. And again, I didn't have a car until my second year of college. I was poor. I was working all these odd jobs, a lot of seasonal jobs. And I wasn't really interested in dating. But I had a great group of friends. I loved my friends. They supported me. They loved me. We would hang out together. And it was both my high school friends, because when you go to Catholic school and you go to school for 12, 13 years all together, you have this unique bond that a lot of public school kids don't have. I mean, so many kids that, never talk to anyone from their high school ever again. But no, I'm still friends with all of them, or not all of them, but a few of them. It was, and then I have my college friends that I became friends with and developed friendships with. And so but at the same time, I loved religion. And so in college, I was on my own spiritual journey. I looked at Judaism and Islam and, just because why not? Just to see what they're all about. But Jesus Christ always brought me back. The story of Jesus, the uniqueness of his story, and how powerful that was. But I was at the same time wrestling with my sexuality, wrestling with things I did in the shadows, basically. And I had these urges, still had the sexuality I didn't know what to do with, and really I guess the conservative kind of culture of America at the time was telling me was like, keep those things private. Don't do that. But at least the suburban culture I grew up in, all of that, especially in Detroit. Detroit does not have, a boys' town, does not have a gayborhood, does not have a Hell's Kitchen. It had, and I lived there for a year or so. It has Ferndale, Michigan, which is really now more of a kind of a yuppie central, but it used to be kind of like the gayborhood. But it's really, it's a very suburban place, right? So there was never a central location to the Detroit's gay community. And because of its blue collarness, it was very secret. It was very under the radar. And that sucks, and it's not healthy, but the culture still kind of survived in that way. And
I was gonna ask at this point, did you have some sort of self-conception of being gay or homosexual or something? Or did you just experience and you didn't label it or talk about it or anything?
I didn't really talk about it. I was closeted. I didn't really want to talk about it. I didn't really care to, because I wasn't interested in dating, and so why talk about it if I'm not actually going out there? So, that's a good question, because I think about that often. Like, I had plenty of people, let's say I was 20, 21. I had plenty of people I could have come out to, plenty of people I could have confided in, but I just did not really think, I didn't really want to think about it. I lived a pretty normal, fine life. I was studying, I was working, I was doing things. It's not like I didn't feel like I was suppressing myself. One of my big mentors in my life is my aunt, my dad's sister, and she had plenty of gay friends. So growing up, I was always around these gay friends. And that's why, like, talking about my dad, it was so interesting. Like, I know we were Catholic, but we were so nice to these guys. One of them, they called, when I was younger, he was my actual, or like my, what'd they call him? He was actually my dad, because he and I had this bond of some sort. And he was a great guy and, family friend. He now lives in Canada, so when I got older, he was kind of harder to see, only because he lived across in Windsor. So plenty of people I could have confided in, but I just did not think anything of it. So I go through college, and I started to attend, but I knew I loved God. I knew I believed in God. I loved the story of Jesus. I wanted to live life with faith in my life. My grandmother, my mom's mom, I remember when I was 13, was received into the Episcopal Church. Okay. She grew up in Canada, typical, like, I don't know, the Canadians out there will kind of get this, like, English Protestant Anglophone kind of person from Ontario, as opposed to the Francophone Catholic, And so I think she kind of, like, solidified that by being an Anglican, just like the Queen. She's still alive, but she's big into the Queen, right? Like any good English Canadian, white grandmother is.
Sure.
So she became Anglican, which is, but she lived in Michigan, so that's the Episcopal Church. And so I remember how similar they were. I'll be a little bit arrogant and say I knew my church history. I knew the importance of liturgy, of the Mass. I loved that. But I had a hard time being Catholic. And around that time was the beginnings of the Obama administration, if we all remember, and how like the Tea Party movement and how conservative the Catholic Church was getting. And so I recognized, and not that I'm really I don't want to turn this political, but, I was really uncomfortable, just very uncomfortable in the Catholic Church by that point. And so I said, okay, well, let me find the opposite of what I grew up with. And not totally the opposite. I wanted a small parish near me and not some big, I grew up in a mega Catholic church. 3,000 to 4,000 people could fit in that church.
Wow.
And I wanted that's big for a Catholic church. That's not a cathedral. And so I wanted the opposite of that. I wanted a small church I could invest, community in and invest my time in. And so I found a cute little Episcopal church in Southeast Michigan that I fell in love with. It looked like it was ripped out of the English countryside. It didn't have a parking lot. It was nestled in a neighborhood, and I just fell in love with it and fell in love with the people. And they had a woman priest, which I was so unused to, and I knew, all right, this is the place I'm gonna come into. Very gay friendly, very helped me. So I started attending there in 2011. I didn't really fully come out until, and I'll explain that in a minute, until 2014. It took me a while to really accept myself. And when I say fully came out, I always say that's when I finally told my dad. Mm-hmm. And that was Memorial Day of 2014. Mm-hmm. And so it was just that process of integrating faith and my sexuality in a way that made sense to me at the time. Now, at the time, that was side A progressive kind of theology. It helped me. There was plenty of gay couples there, men and women, living beautiful lives. They are living beautiful lives. I respect the hell out of these people. They are wonderful people. Many of them were married first, so a lot, married to the opposite sex first. A lot of older couples, they have children, but they showed me how it can be done. And I still love them, and they're still beautiful people. And they just helped me kind of integrate that into my life. And they made it's funny because they weren't as progressive or liberal as you might expect. And I hate to say it like that. I remember one time, one of the gay patriarchs, can we say that? Of the church, he goes, if this church ever becomes the gay church, I'm leaving.
Interesting. Yeah.
He was very humble. He's like, I don't want this to be like the gay church. I want us to be a church for all people. And I respected that. I was like, yeah, I get it totally. And so I just fell in love with it because they were all there for the same purpose. They were all there to worship their God.
Yeah.
And they recognized that. And that was so great. I got involved and life continued. Now from an early age, I had sensed a call to ministry.
Okay.
And I had looked, and this is kind of getting into my call to the priesthood. I had looked into the Catholic priesthood, looked into the Jesuits, diocesan, and I always thought, I remember going to the Detroit seminary and thinking, I feel like I'm in the right place, but something doesn't feel right. I think I finally realized. I also remember, this might be a little harsh sounding, but being at a dinner, my dad is he is a bookkeeper for a bunch of Catholic churches in the Archdiocese. And at the time, one of his clients was a novitiate. And I remember seeing this man and thinking, and picking it up, like, I think this man is gay, and not that he's living a life, and I don't remember his name. I don't know. I know there's, there are plenty of gay people in the Catholic priesthood, but I thought, I don't want to use this as a cover for my sexuality. And at the time, that's exactly what I felt like I was doing, was just using this as a cover to escape my sexuality. And I realized I don't want to lie to the church. I don't want to lie to myself and truly suppress that part of me. And in any event, they're going to find out. There's plenty of psychological tests. There's plenty of tests that you take. Eventually, you're going to pretty much be found out. And so I couldn't join the Catholic priesthood, couldn't join, the Jesuits are, top-notch Catholic, priests. So, but I just thought, I'm not going to lie to myself. This is terrible, and I'm not going to lie to the church. So I put that away for a while. And for a long time, since probably I was 8, I remember cutting out pieces of bread and giving it to the dog as hosts. And I just always loved church. I was an altar boy. I was in the choir. I always loved church. What, kind of leading up to the side B discussion, what I realized I hadn't found was a love for Jesus.
Okay.
And this is kind of my own personal critique of a lot of liturgical churches, and I guess any church, is that sometimes the focus is more on your relationship to church than with Jesus Christ, where that should always be the primary focus. So where do I want to kind of go from here? 2014 was a pretty watershed year in my life, as that's when I kind of fully came out. The summer of 2014 felt like I could do anything, be anything. Everyone knew who I was, and I wasn't afraid to be, I could go on dates, I could meet guys. And three things happen. 2 friends get married, not same-sex, opposite-sex couples, Catholic. And that was like the first of them of the friend group to get married. And so it really left an impression on me, like, oh man, we're growing up. All right, this is what we do now. We get married. In September of that year, my oldest friend, I kind of mentioned earlier, Joey, tragically took his own life. It was a day, of course, I'll never forget. It happened the Monday after one of those friends got married. And so coming off this high of this weekend, my friend takes his own life. And then a month later, I meet my now ex. And so all this stuff happens. And I think this is it. This is life. I met the man of my life, and yet the highs and the lows of life occurred to me in that 1 year. So I begin a relationship with this man. He's great. He's everything. I mean, speaking of Detroit's conservatism, he grew up ELCA Lutheran. We met on an app, and I was pretty open in my app that I'm a man of faith and I believe in God and I go to church. And so if you don't like it, that's fine, but you're gonna have to deal with that. And he was so interested and loved the fact that I went to church. And in Detroit, it's I would say most of the gay community probably grew up in church and now pretty much reject it. So it was, and not everybody, I don't want to make a blanket generalization, but it felt like finding a needle in a haystack, someone to date who was as into faith as I was, or at least interested in. So we begin a relationship. And it was beautiful. It was great. It was, I could say he was tall, dark, and handsome, so why not? And I was, and he was interested in faith, and we started to do things together. And he turned me on to like Doctor Who, and I turned him on to like Detroit. The suburb I grew up in is a streetcar suburb, so it's an old suburb, more liberal, more attuned to Detroit. It's where the Detroit Zoo is. He grew up in a further north suburb that's very conservative, very cul-de-sac, we never go to Detroit unless it's for a sports game, and then we leave immediately kind of thing.
Sure.
So I showed him Detroit, he showed me Doctor Who. It was a great relationship.
Of course.
And that was it. I had applied to and gotten into a library science program at Wayne State in Detroit. And I realized, wait, I still feel this call to the priesthood, to ministry. I need to go explore that. And so, but at that time, I could only afford one grad program. So it has to be either or.
Yeah.
And so I had to put off library science grad program and did the discernment program through the Diocese of Michigan. And
that's Episcopalian diocese?
Yes. Yep. The Episcopal Diocese of Michigan. Okay. And so, the discernment process takes upwards maybe 3 to 4 years. So we moved in together. A lot of my story has to include the fact of I didn't know what I didn't know. That's just it. I was pretty set in my ways as a progressive. I didn't know what the side languages were. I had no interest. Why would I need to know? Anything else is conservative and way too traditional, and there was no thinking of it. So 2019 comes, the year I leave for seminary. My ex and I are planning for that, and then we're also planning for a wedding. We had gotten engaged in the December of 2017, had a year-long engagement, and then got married July of 2019. What's funny is that, and I just want everyone to know, he is an amazing person. Like, God put us together for a reason. There's no denying that.
He
And
introduced
he
you to
has
Doctor Who. I mean,
yeah,
what more
exactly.
could you ask for?
Yeah, exactly. This is nothing, really nothing due to him. There's some, I think by the end of our relationship, there was definitely a kind of growing apart, a clear kind of understanding that some things we did too soon. But for the most part, I don't fault him for anything. We talked. I kind of got his permission to do this because he's in part of this. He's kind of collateral damage to what happened. But he has been so graceful and so understanding and so loving throughout this and throughout my life, throughout to the part of my life that we've known each other, of course, that we just get each other, and that's all, all well and good. So, but we get married July 2019, and I say that because he goes, I remember him going, Zach, do you not realize we're going through 3 traumatic experiences? Getting married, moving, and starting school are, some at once, about in the span of about a month, are very traumatic experiences. And so we kind of always recognize that. So we get married in July 2019, July 20th, 2019, which was, for whatever reason, the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and we really loved that we got to share our wedding anniversary with the 50th anniversary of the moon landing for whatever reason. Must be the Doctor Who connection. And then we moved July 31st down to Alexandria, Virginia. And then I started school, a week or 2 weeks later. So, and here I was wet behind the ears at a seminary, at the most prestigious seminary in the Episcopal Church, the Virginia Theological Seminary. And I didn't know what I didn't know. So this is September of 2019. And maybe that kind of sets up what's about to happen worldwide. In September of 2019, I remember having a conversation with a classmate of mine, a friend of mine, and I think we were talking about friendship. I think we were talking about a theology of friendship or what that might look like. And of course, this guy, he's read everything and he already knows. He's like, oh, have you ever read Wesley Hill? And I go, no, who's that? Wesley Hill is probably the only other Episcopal priest in my position. I think we may well be the only 2 side B priests in the Episcopal Church. And if you're out there, other side B Episcopal priests, please let me know. I have no idea. I have not found any others. So I go, no, who is that? And he goes, oh, you should read his books. And I went, okay. And he didn't really mean, he wasn't trying to get me to side. He's not a side B person. That's the funny thing. But he goes, yeah, this book called Spiritual Friendship. You should go read it. And I go, okay, a book called, and I had never heard of Allred of Ravoux, nothing either. So I buy it and I start to read it, and I get angry. I get so angry. And I remember throwing the book across the room because he had painted for me a picture of friendship that I had never taken into consideration, a theology of friendship that I had never taken into consideration. It really shocked me to my core, and had put so beautifully a theology, not only a theology of friendship, but a theology of marriage that made complete sense. That what's funny, the Catholic Church or any of my other, kind of spiritual journey, along the spiritual journey I had, no one had ever really brought to my attention, or I had never investigated. Right? I don't want to blame other people. I didn't investigate. I didn't do the work. I didn't think of it. I was, a lot of my 20s, as much as I wanted to go back to church, and I was in church, and now I'm at seminary, there was still a huge learning curve that I did not anticipate. So I realized I just got married to a man. The ink is still fresh. I love this man. I don't like this. I totally reject it. Goodbye.
You reject the Wesley Hill
Yeah,
framing.
Wesley Hill, side B. I mean, I'm trying to remember,
I don't
because
know
it
if
was
he
really
uses
just
that.
the book. Yeah, go on.
I was just saying, I don't know. Can't remember if he uses any side B language.
I don't
in
think he
there, if he's
does.
Just,
Yeah, I don't
No,
think
no,
in that book,
he doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't think he does either. I'm just saying he just like whatever he was talking about. I was like, no, I can't deal with this. I have to focus on my studies. This is not something I can deal with right now.
I don't have room for an existential crisis.
Right. I don't have exactly. I do not have room for an existential. Never mind. 6 months later, the world will be thrown into an existential crisis that then I have to confront. So, and that's what happens. Is that I then finally come across David Bennett and Eve Tushnet and heck even RB, Mrs. Butterfield or
Yeah.
So like I'm just like, whoa, like this can't happen. Now at the same time I'm thinking about theology, I'm thinking about where I come from, and I'm thinking about the automobile and kind of like the meaning of the automobile in American culture. I'm a boy from Detroit. This is what I think about. And so professor goes, you should read Jacques Ellul, Ellul, for out there, for those who don't know who he is. I'm reading Jacques Ellul at the beginning of the pandemic, Anarchy and Christianity, Presence of the Modern World. Then I get into the meaning of the city and the technological society, and I'm just blown away by his whole thought, his whole what we call Ellulian theology, his whole thinking, Ellulian thinking. Because it's not just it's not just theological, it's also kind of a social critique. Then I come into contact with William Stringfellow, an Episcopal, he's a lawyer, trained lawyer, but an Episcopal thinker as well. And an incredible, they wrote to each other, they knew each other. And so, which I would love to find, that's my project, is to find those letters and to publish them.
Lost?
Because I think, I don't know if they're lost, they're probably just, Ellul still has, his family and his scholars around him. There's boxes of papers that have yet to be unpublished by Ellul. And then there's all of Stringfellow's papers at Cornell, which I'd love to go through. So I'm just reading these guys, and they're, not just anything about human sexuality. Actually very little about that, actually. Just about a lot of social critique and a lot of technology. And Stringfellow's really good for an American outlook and critique of American society. Yeah, so I'm reading these guys. With David Bennett, I don't know if he really coined this term, but he brought it to my attention that there was the idolatry of marriage, and any of those, and because you could also say an idolatry of singleness as well. And I realized that I had to do a lot of self-reflection, a lot of journaling, a lot of writing, a lot of, is that what I did? Did I really want what my parents have and try to force it onto myself, or force it for myself? And what is this theology of friend, or not that there's really one dogmatic theology of friendship, but what is it about friendship, in my life and marriage in my life? And it kind of became clear that friendship was all in my life. It pretty much colors my entire relationships throughout my life. How much more excited I ever was to have friends than I ever was about to get married. Despite any same-sex attraction, the funny thing is that I remember when my ex and I got engaged, I never really wanted to call him my fiance. I always kind of pivoted to boyfriend. I always liked having a boyfriend more than having a fiance or a husband. And I always wonder about that. Like, was there some, was I really more interested in having a boyfriend, than ever a husband? So that was the start of COVID. The summer of 2020, I did chaplaincy work. All seminary students are usually required to do a unit of what's called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education. And I did my unit the summer of 2020 at a hospital in Washington, D.C. And that confronted me with a lot of death. And not necessarily a COVID death. We were allowed to refuse to see COVID patients because of how new and it was. I lived in a community, so I didn't really want to bring it back with me, of course. I lived on campus with my ex. I haven't said his name, and that's unfortunate. he's a private guy, and I don't want to, it's fine. So anyways, yeah, going through that summer confronted me with a lot of meaning and a lot of, what is death and suffering, and what does it look like to be a Christian? What does it really look like to be a Christian? Have I really committed myself to this life as a Christian? Stringfellow, reading more Stringfellow, he gives a speech in 1979 to integrity. Stringfellow was never officially out of the closet. I don't know if you two know much about him.
I know nothing about Stringfellow.
Yeah.
Yes.
I studied theology. I know about him. We read him in my undergraduate. So, he was a lawyer.
Yep.
I think in New York area.
Yeah.
And he was really focused on being a Christian is when you're a Christian now, you should contend with the powers and principalities of evil.
Right.
Instead,
Right.
and you want to fight for life. And he was what we now call like queer or gay or something.
Right.
But I don't know if he used those terms or categories. I think he didn't.
No.
He was also, interestingly, he had some sort of partnership lifelong with this poet named Anthony Towney, I think, or Town
Exactly.
or something.
Yeah.
I want to know more about that. I'd love to hear more if you know
Yeah.
about that relationship, because I've been curious about it, and I don't know if there's information on it, but there's something was there. And I know he worked a lot with minorities as a lawyer. Yeah, that's kind of what I know.
His first job out of law school was in Harlem, was defending a lot of the youth, a lot of the delinquents, and a lot of the destitute in Harlem. Stringfellow it must come from an early colonial American family. So he's probably he was born Episcopalian, very kind of waspy background. And yet I think he really understood the deep complexity of what America is. And so he meets, and I'm not really, I say these guys' name like I'm some sort of, what am I trying to say? Like I know everything about them. He meets Anthony Town in the early 60s. Anthony was a Methodist and a poet. And yeah, they formed, it's so interesting. I have a book in front of me, and it's called, he writes, if you don't mind me kind of waxing theological right now.
Go ahead.
He writes, so he's speaking to Integrity, which is a formerly LGBTQ group in the Episcopal Church. And it's now pretty much defunct because there just isn't much need anymore. Because it was kind of this special group for LGBTQ persons, but with almost total kind of inclusion of LGBTQ persons into the church, Integrity doesn't really exist anymore. But in 1979, Integrity kind of needed to exist. And he's saying this, where was Integrity meeting? At the National Convention of Integrity in Denver in September of 79. And this is a little snippet. He goes, "The new life in Christ means for our minds and our bodies and for any of our abilities, that we have the exceptional freedom to be who we are and thus to welcome and affirm our sexuality as a gift, absolved from guilt or embarrassment or shame. To be liberated in our sexuality from self-indulgence or lust, to be free to love with wholeness as persons, and to recognize and identify and embrace the same wholeness in others, to be freed to enjoy, to celebrate, to play, and to have fun in our own creation, in relationship to others and to the rest of creation." Stringfellow also critiqued a lot of LGBTQ stuff at the time, kind of the hedonism of the community. At the same time, he critiqued any conservative backlash that sought to suppress these people. And in that moment of reading that, I realized that I truly had not given my sexuality over to God. That there was stuff there that was sinful and was needing of redemption. And it made me recognize the way in which my sexuality is broken and lives out its sinfulness. And that was really hard to recognize because it included my relationship with my ex. And I say that because there was definitely things that it was just there. It was completely there. A lot of permissiveness, a lot of things I hadn't really dealt with. and a lot of things that, to sound bluntful about it, the side A community just wasn't talking about or kind of refused to acknowledge. This is the part of my story where I don't want to sound polemical, and I'm trying to tread lightly, but things like pornography, casual sex, open relationships, a lot of it in the secular LGBTQ spaces and in the side A spaces can be very hush hush. Don't talk about it. Just do what you need to do or want to do. Just don't talk about it. And yet at the same time, I was recognizing and becoming increasingly aware of the fact that no, the Bible does talk about sexual immorality. The Bible does talk about using our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. We are supposed to use them in holiness. And where was God calling me, and how was God calling me to live a life in wholeness, in holiness, and to His glory? Throughout this, I had been going to spiritual direction, as I still do to this day. I hadn't really started therapy, but I now do go to therapy, as all good pastors should, because of how much we come across. And that, oh man, I was just having not a good time with this. I didn't want to confront any of this. I didn't want to deal with any of this. I didn't know how to do it with my ex. I didn't know how to kind of not confront him about it, but say, I don't know if the way we're living could be supported by Scripture, or the things kind of we're permissing in this relationship can be supported by Scripture.
May I ask, at this point, though, I assume you'd engage side A readings of Scripture at this point where you're talking about. But did they not seem compelling, I guess?
No, they hadn't. I think not like the side B stuff I was reading. And I wasn't, I hate to. It's funny because I'm in the middle of seminary, so I'm reading everything else out there that I have to read for seminary. So what's funny is that my second year, a guy came on campus. He was a first year, and he moved from a side B to a side A position.
Oh, okay.
And so he was kind of, in a way, counseling. But actually, we hadn't really met each other, or we didn't start to talk with each other until the middle of the year. And this is all happening in the middle of COVID, so a lot of stuff was. We weren't really meeting each other where classmates should be meeting each other because they weren't happening, or they were happening in a very fragmented state. So we didn't really get to talking until about the middle of the year when we were outside at a campfire, and he kind of mentioned something about side B being side B, or coming from a side B position to a side A position. And I go, wait a minute, I need to talk to you. I've been wrestling with this. Yeah. So he and I kind of formed our friendship over that, kind of helping each other through what I was dealing with. Yeah, I became increasingly, not convinced that the side A position was, a lot of it I fear and I feel kind of comes out of psychology and maybe science, and that's natural based, whereas I'm looking at the spiritualness of what my same-sex attraction means.
Okay.
It became kind of very loosey-goosey. I think a lot of side A people would say, well, pornography is not healthy, or casual sex isn't healthy. I don't think a lot of people would. But then at the same time, a lot in my church I would hear on campus, well, if you have to watch pornography so you don't go out looking for casual sex or something, then that's fine. And I'm thinking, no, none of this sounds healthy at all. At that time too, my ex and I became kind of in faith and spiritual matters kind of distant. He wasn't. He just became something different than Christian, and that's fine. I was in the middle of it, and I wasn't going to be evangelical and be like, no, this is the gospel, and you have to come to Jesus Christ, and we have to do this. We have to do this now. It was very much a conversation of I'm feeling this way, and you're feeling that way, and both are fine, and I'm not gonna pressure you. You have the freedom, I have the freedom, and that's just what it is. And at the same time, I'm wrestling with it all. I'm not discounting the relationship we have. We're still living together. We're still sharing the same bed. But it was very much this is the way I feel. I see the way things are going. Yeah, side A, because then it became, because of that language, it was like, okay, well, am I side A or am I side B? And what does side B really mean anyways? And then, yeah, right, then the other two sides as well. Yeah, it was a huge learning, as I said, a huge learning curve that I just did not know, where to take it.
When do you feel like you went to that moment? When was the moment that you became side B? Like in the final year of your seminary? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I was in the middle of seminary. It was, I think the real moment was May of 21. Okay. So the spring semester is over. I'm sitting on a bench on the seminary campus, and I'm reading some Jacques Ellul. And I don't want to get too into the weeds about this, but his words really, what I was reading really convicted me about the uniqueness of the Christian witness towards marriage, and what's the word he uses? The cohesiveness and the clarity that it provides. That the way God intended marriage to be and for relationships to be is fundamental in the human family unit, man and woman together. I remember writing in the book I was reading, I am side B. That's it. I mean, that's just it. Is that it? Because I think side B does offer both a theology of friendship and a theology of marriage that work hand in hand, in order that people who do not, whether you're gay or straight, who do not feel called to marriage, can live out a life guided by friendship, which is ultimately modeled by Jesus Christ himself. And I was just listening to one of your episodes. I think it was the one with Gregory Coles. Because it's true. Now I'm forgetting what exactly was said. It was a scripture quote. 1 Corinthians, I think 7, about how single people give their lives to God, right? It doesn't matter if you're gay or straight. As a single person, you are uniquely called to this, as a Christian, to this life in which you can serve Jesus and serve the church wholeheartedly. Whereas a married couple does that through the raising of children and the building up of a family. And that was much more exciting to me than marriage. The way in which I recognized for myself that I did create an idol out of marriage. I wanted it so badly and so much that I didn't think of the other person. Right, in that relationship with my ex, I definitely bear a lot of fault. I'm a sinner, I am a sinner just like the rest. I have a lot of jealousy issues, some control, just like I need things the way they are. I think, just like a lot of us, I think a lot of us recognize that within ourselves.
Can you comment on, so it's interesting, you talked about a life, a childhood actually very full of friendship, and that's not everybody's story, growing up with a lot of friends. And so some people's narratives will be like, oh, you're just seeking that gay marriage to fill that gap of friendship. And sometimes the idolatry of marriage plays itself out in such that people think, really, that's the only way I'll be able to secure a friend. And just in what ways what did that idolatry of marriage mean for you, having kind of come from a set of friends, and what did marriage mean for you when you were pursuing it?
Yeah. Oh man, what did marriage mean? I don't know if marriage meant anything more than just being with somebody and doing life together, which sounds like a fine definition of marriage. They're always telling us about marriage that it's not easy. You got to work at it. Neither is friendship, but I thought it was going to come easy. I thought it was going to come easy. I thought, okay, and it isn't, and it doesn't. And I realized that the ways, what does marriage truly mean? I was looking to my parents, which is full of blood, sweat, and tears. I guess there were some parts of my ex and I's of our marriage that did seem easy. I remember a friend in seminary I was kind of relaying frustrations to, and he goes, "Is your marriage just television, food, and sex?" And I go, "Yeah, actually it is. That's exactly right." And if that's the definition of marriage, that's not marriage at all. That's just like having a roommate that you get to, have the bed with. That's not a healthy picture of marriage at all. I think we both kind of stunted each other's growth in a way. I needed to let go of him so that he could grow, and he needed to let go of me so I could grow. There was you could probably also say there's a lot of codependency going on that was not healthy.
You feel like the kind of unhealth that was in that relationship, which could exist in certain people's friendships, exist in certain people's heterosexual marriages, did that influence your theological journey of saying, oh, this side A isn't all it's cracked up to be? I mean, just how do you play, that personal journey and theological journey happening at the same time? They of course influence each other, but did you have a vision of oh, there could be a healthier version of me in a side A marriage, but that's still not theologically settling or satisfying?
Yeah, it's funny. This is really the question of the ages, because my side B to A friend I met in seminary posed the same question to me, and I would say there probably would be a healthier version of me who, in a side A marriage, but it's, in my estimation, still wouldn't make it right. Still wouldn't make the marriage biblically allowed. I definitely take a nuanced position. I need to make this also clear. What William Stringfellow had with Anthony Town, I love. I can't deny two people being together, and I can't deny. Yeah.
About that question though, my question is if he is what we now call celibate partnership, if he and Anthony Town had that, or if is his relationship like more of a prototypical side A like relationship, or is it more prototypical side B like relationship? I can't tell from the data that I know. Do you know?
No. Yeah. So what I've heard, and David, if I haven't answered your question, I'm sorry, and we'll come back to it. I know I met Bill Kiley Wellerman, who is a kind of Stringfellow scholar. That's the word I was looking for earlier. And I think he knew William.
Okay.
In fact, I'm pretty sure he did, because he kept on calling him Bill, and I'm like, you just can't call William Stringfellow Bill. Sure. Who calls him Bill?
They're friends.
And he told me once that I think Williams said to Bill Wiley Kellerman that he wished he could get married to, but I often wonder if that was for purely legal purposes, so more of a civil union rather than a true marriage.
Yeah.
Because it's like those things that you wish you could ask dead people.
Yeah, of course.
Mr. Stringfellow, what is marriage? What is, and not necessarily what is the nature of your relationship with Anthony? That's a bit too personal, but certainly what is your feeling?
I would ask that question.
No. It's and Stringfellow dies in 1985, and I don't think he really ever writes about HIV/AIDS, and so I always wondered what he would have said about the AIDS crisis if he had lived several more years.
Yeah.
Because that really, what's funny, another thing that kind of influenced me was, I'm forgetting her name, and Fran Lebowitz had this great Netflix special, and she's a lesbian woman, and she goes, in the 70s, gay liberation didn't want to join the military, and we didn't want to get married. Now all we want to do is join the military and get married.
Yeah.
And that was kind of funny. I was like, yeah, you're right. That those were patriarchal, heteronormative, institutions.
Yeah.
And it was the AIDS crisis that kind of flip that like, oh no, we need protections, civil protections. So, and I'm not against at all celibate partnerships or committed friendships. I could very well see myself being a part of one. I just can't call that marriage. And so, yeah, you're right, David. When I was going through this, I really had to ask myself, wait, am I just breaking up with him because we're codependent? I have flaws, he has flaws. This isn't healthy. We moved in, too quickly. We don't really know each other. We just wanted to get married. Or is this a theological reason? I could easily say it is both, and that is okay. Yeah.
Another question: did you return to Roman Catholic theologies around marriage as part of your evolution towards side B? And I ask because obviously you were raised as Catholic. So to what extent was like Roman Catholic theologies of marriage as part of that transformation or not?
I don't know if it would. I just don't consider it Roman Catholic. You'd think I've never read JP2's Theology of the Body. I would love to. I know it's like 1,000 pages long and I'm sure very dense, and I have not yet to find a copy of it. I think it's out there. I'm sure Amazon has it, but I've just not really gotten my hands on it. I would say it was more of seeing, if anything, I've gone more reformed. It is about the covenantal nature of God to his people. It is more about I take strongly to human depravity, and that, because it was facing the fact that that human sexuality is just as fallen as any other part of human creation.
Sure.
And that's what side A and secular progressive, LGBTQ culture wasn't telling me, wasn't really explaining. And I realized, I know the ways in which I sin sexually, and those are not right. And I can't live this lie anymore because I've really just been pushing it off. And that's kind of the more personal side of the story, right? I was exposed to porn when I was 11. I was exposed to all that and had a very kind of nonchalant relationship with porn and casual sex. That as much as I was going to church and loving Jesus and it was still there, because really no one was telling me otherwise. Not my side A church, not the progressive kind of groups I was hanging out with. It was just very hush hush. And then I realized, oh no, this is not right. I'm not using my body as a temple of the Holy Spirit, and I'm certainly not, I'm not looking into the eyes of another man and recognizing his humanity and his dignity either. So, and that really culminated with my spouse, that I was like, I can't look at him and say I'm treating him the right way, and because I'm not. Yeah. So so that's been kind of a journey coming out of that, of realizing, oh yeah, I need to put things away that are not God honoring and not good.
So then did you and your husband, you separated at some point during seminary or right after seminary?
During seminary. Yeah, well, and that's what they don't tell you about seminary, actually, is that they're, gay or straight, a lot of couples divorce during seminary. I wasn't, it's kind of a hidden, open secret in Protestant seminary circles of how many couples divorce during seminary. And what's funny is that for most of history, that's been a woman, right? And that hasn't been two men. It's been a man and a woman separating and getting divorced. So we separated my last semester, and it was very mutual. Sorry. It was very respectful. It was very respectful. That's when it culminated. And what's funny, the funny part of it is that he's never liked winters. And so he now lives in Northern Virginia, where it's much warmer during the winters. So he's slowly marching his way towards Florida, and I'm very glad I could help him do that.
Good.
So I don't know if he'll actually ever make it to Florida. Actually, he wants to move to Hawaii, but that's a whole other story. Sure. So and we still talk. We talked this past week. We're not, we're not on bad terms. And the whole, well, why don't you divorce? People ask us that. Why aren't you divorced? That's just, I moved. New York has terrible rules, and I always said I'll take full responsibility in that I was the one that broke his heart. He wasn't. Yeah. And so I will not have him be the one that has to file for divorce. I'll do it, but New York has strong anti-divorce laws, so it will come. And yeah, surprisingly, it is not. Well, it doesn't really. It's not one of those kind of 6 months. Just be a resident. So
Understood.
yeah.
What about right at your seminary? You get hired by an Episcopalian church.
Yeah.
And when you got hired, did you talk about being side B, or is that just not?
No,
something that
it's
came
very
up?
no.
Yeah.
It's not something that came up. It's not something a lot of people. I don't say no. A lot of people know about it now because I've been much more. I tried to preach on it once. It did not go very well.
Yeah.
That's just and not yeah. I broke one of my own cardinal rules about preaching. You don't talk about yourself. That's not usually a good thing. And so it's been hard. I don't know. It hasn't actually been that hard. You form relationships. That's all you really have to do. Once people get to know you and see that there's someone there, there's a pastor, a caring, compassionate person, whatever happens, happens. So the Episcopal Church is pretty side A. So I have to walk very humbly and very respectfully. I'm in a pretty suburban parish in which there are a few gay members and gay couples, but for the most part, it's a very suburban church. And I hate to use the word suburban. That's not really what I mean. It skews older and it skews straight. It's a very because it's politically mixed. It's a very purple congregation. This kind of stuff is kind of I would call it a side A church because my boss wouldn't deny a gay couple, but we don't get a lot of gay couples, I guess is what I'm saying. There's not, this isn't a Manhattan church, a San Francisco church. It's
Are you able to opt out of marrying gay couples if it came up?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes. And that's always been a stipulation of the Episcopal Church, that there was always a conscience clause. There's also just the clause of, well, I'm allowed to refuse any sacrament to anybody. As well, I shouldn't say it like that. That sounds a little harsh. Because I think if I denied communion to somebody, I would need a cause for that. And there is provisions for what that looks like. But for marriage, I'm actually allowed to deny anybody, whether gay or straight.
Is marriage a sacrament in the Episcopalian Church?
Yep.
Oh. How many you got?
So, sorry?
How many sacraments do you guys have?
Oh, who knows, right? I think I would consider 7, like, totally. I know some people which is very, like, as reformed as I am, it should be 2.
Yeah.
But no, there's totally 7. Yeah, I'm very much a mix. Like, I don't fit in anywhere.
You're like the Catholics in that respect.
Yeah. Right. I take like a very reformed soteriology, but like sacramentology, I'm very Catholic, and liturgically, I'm very Catholic. Very, very, very high church. So
understood.
Yeah.
How does your church or your boss, your priest's boss, or your bishop?
The rector.
But
the bishop. The bishop is the Bishop of Long Island. Yes, he's I guess he is my ultimate boss.
How do they relate to you as a side B person? Is it just like, okay, it's fine if you have that unusual belief, you do that, or is it something else?
No, yeah, the Bishop of Long Island has been a very moderate voice between the two camps. So there are still plenty of Episcopalians in the church that are, let's say, side B or traditional on human sexuality and even women's ordination. And my boss has definitely come in and tried to moderate between the two camps. He accepts me as side B. He doesn't agree with it. He's told me all this. He doesn't agree with my position, but he accepts where I stand on things. It's the position of the church to say a priest can say no to a same-sex marriage, but needs to find a priest for this couple who will marry them. Yeah. So as long as I follow those rules, that's fine. It would be, I don't know. It would, of course I would do that. I would never not do that. And I say, like, I'm allowed to deny gay or straight, because I remember a priest in seminary for my pastoral care class going, listen, if someone comes to you and they're 3 times divorced and they're looking for their 4th marriage, deny them. Do not, because they obviously do not have they do not have a sense of marriage, of a theology of marriage, if they just keep going through marriages. So there's definitely like some leeway of getting around that.
I think another question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I say another question that could come up is, why did you not leave for like a left side A church? Why did you not transfer to a left side A church, even if they're not side B exactly? Because there's not many like side B like denominations in the world,
right?
But yeah, why did you not in a left side A church?
And that's exactly, but you answered your own question. That's exactly it. Yeah. It's like, Zach, why don't you go to ACNA? Except what the ACNA sometimes puts out about gay people, I do not feel comfortable with at all. It's like I have a history of being in a same-sex marriage. Like that isn't going to fly in a lot of Catholic spaces. No. That's not going to fly in ACNA spaces. No. That's certainly not going to fly in PCA spaces.
No.
It's like, listen, like I feel God brought me, not brought me out of a marriage. I don't want to say that, just brought me into a fuller understanding of what marriage is and what friendship is and who Jesus Christ is in terms of what I needed to be saved from. But yeah, I'm a lot more comfortable in the Episcopal Church because it does hold, right? It does hold spaces for theological conservatives and theological liberals. And, the broader Anglican communion is pretty traditional in terms of marriage. And I know I have support in corners of the church that if I needed to, I can rely on and go to. I don't like that though. The Episcopal Church loves to say it's Big Tent, and I'm not saying I'm kind of putting that to the test because I really don't want us to be siloed. I don't like that. Central Florida is the big kind of diocese that's known for being traditional. And I don't think I should have to go to Central Florida to live out my call as the Episcopal Church or as a priest in the Episcopal Church. It's a beautiful, diocese. I know I have plenty of friends there. The bishop is great, but it's like you're just kind of like telling me to go to my room and never come out, even though I'm ordained for the church. Now that makes that might make getting a job harder. Plenty of churches are very explicit about their progressiveness, about their affirming, and that's fine. And so I won't serve there, and that's fine. But I know there's plenty of churches across this church that are either would either like welcome a side B priest or be comfortable with having a side B priest.
Sure.
So I'm not too concerned.
Got it.
About that. But I'm led by the Spirit. I have to be open to what God calls me to and to where God is calling me. And so whatever that looks like, that's what it looks like. And I'm all ears to God's word. So
got it.
That's it.
Thank you.
Can I go back to when you were talking about those kind of convictions around a side B versus a side A approach? And you mentioned kind of the Reformed covenantal perspective in thinking about marriage and what that, just kind of elaborating what that means, because for a lot of people, that's what holds them onto a monogamous side A perspective and keeps them from going polyamorous, and they feel like that's good enough to stay within those bounds. But and sometimes I also see people take covenants so far that they're afraid of brotherhood covenants or friendship covenants, and they're like, because they have a very mono-covenantal view instead of seeing it more in this like, a tapestry of covenants in life. So I'm just curious what it means for you in the marriage covenant for that to be an important part of your theological reasoning.
Sure. And I wonder if then this is where we go to, right, because that all sounds great. Monogamy is great. That's what I think God intended us for. Then what I'm wondering about is that then it gets into the kind of the specifics of what happens in that monogamy. What happens, what is the purpose of sex?
Yeah.
Is monogamy, is that what it is? Is monogamy, or is it about the sexual act itself that we're actually talking about? sexually active for close to 10 years. And, I was always told, oh, words like, oh, here, now we can throw out words that people are listening to. I don't have to explain. Arsena koitai. I mean, right, it really came down to one word. Does it really come down to one word sometimes? I think it does. Is it arsena koitai? Yeah, totally. What does arsena koitai mean? What does malakoi, right before it mean? Mm-hmm. I had to really wrestle with those words. Is it about monogamy? And that's it? I don't know. I didn't think so. I think it really had to do with the purpose of sex was. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of sex was for human flourishing and the bonding of a man to a woman, and for that procreative opportunity to happen.
Yeah.
And that anything outside of that is doesn't lead to life. It doesn't lead. I mean, it really doesn't. I mean, and that's really hard to say sometimes, and hard to think about, because we're just like, well, aren't I allowed to have sex? I don't know. I have no, I don't really think so. I have no right. I don't have a right to my body. It's not my body. It's God's gift to me that ultimately came from him. And so I have to honor that gift. And that's the side A position is, arsena koitai we don't really know what it means. We really don't know what Paul was talking about. And I finally had to come to the conclusion, through study and through prayer, that I think that doesn't make any sense. I think Paul exactly knew what he was talking about. It is two words taken from Leviticus 18:22, and that's it. I'm sorry. And I'll show anyone this article. Granger's his last name. A short little article, basically about those two words. And much better than whatever Gagnon wrote or whatever a side A person might write. Just very short and concise. Arsena koitai is, Paul coined it, but plenty of words around arseno were being used around that time to mean other things. Well, see, I don't have the article in front of me. That's the one article I forgot to grab. And, I was totally...
The common thing is that pederasty, Paul was actually referring to that. And it's like, there was a word for pederasty. It's called pederasty.
Right. And we have to look at the culture of the time. I had to ask myself, would Jesus, being the faithful Jew he was, would he have affirmed gay sex? I don't.
Good question.
No, he wouldn't.
Yeah.
I honestly had to I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't think he would have. And that that shook me to my core. I had the receipts of living a gay, active homosexual lifestyle. And I'm just thinking, shoot. Yeah, no, that isn't the way. That isn't the way. And I was not honoring my body. I had to recognize that, and the way in which that kind of came out, throughout my early adulthood. And it hurt. I mean, it hurts. It really hurts when you've been doing something and you're just kind of going along, and then you realize, no. And a priest friend of mine, he said, well, we weren't really talking about this. We were talking about something else, but he goes, it was a quote from someone else saying, the truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable. And that's the joy of the gospel, is that, it'll make you miserable, but actually what I get in return is eternal life, and a life given to the glory of God. And, it's, I'm not here to judge and condemn other, gay side A Christians. And I hope I'm not coming across that way. I just wonder if we can be a little bit more thoughtful about the Bible and take it for what it is, the Word of God. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not a literalist, I'm not a fundamentalist, and yet thy word is truth. Jesus tells us in John 17. We know that, you may not believe this literally, it may not be inerrant for you, but it is truth. And we have to take that very seriously. All of it. I think a lot of I think a lot of the scholar is, what am I trying to say? We don't want to take it as truth because we live in a world that is suspicious. Alol talks about this. We live in an age of suspicion. Everything is suspicious. We have to analyze and be suspicious of everything. So whether Paul wrote this or not, well, who knows? And it's like, well, it's not about that. Paul, yeah, you're right. Paul didn't write Hebrews probably, but that doesn't mean it isn't truth. Paul didn't write Timothy, but that doesn't mean it's not truth. And that's something, it's a heavy pill to swallow. It confronts a lot about how we live. And so I'm in these side B spaces, and there's still things I'm grappling with, still things I try to take to the Bible and understand a little bit better. I've had to really analyze my relationship with Pride Month, about what I'm comfortable doing, what I'm comfortable going to, in a church that is full, well, not my particular church, but in a national church full of rainbow flags. And it's like, I just want us to think deeper about what we're actually saying to these people, to the LGBTQ community. And because it isn't right, if we're just flowing along with culture, that isn't the Christian witness. And I don't know if we're doing them a service of not explaining the gospel, what the gospel is to LGBTQ people. Because there's a lot of, that's where I get kind of critical, is that there's a lot of sin. We're all sinners. There's a lot of sin in the LGBTQ community. I think we're, I know what I'm saying can sound harsh to people, but I think it's a reality we have to face. It's not all rainbows and kittens, as it were. Every community has its problems, and what can the gospel say, and how are we saying it to people that might really need to hear it? Yeah. Oof. So going back to sorry guys, I don't know. Going back to the covenant, it's like, yeah, covenants are great, and I love that there is, commitment to people. I just know we might say these words and may not actually mean them, because that's how I lived. And so I just hope people are really taking seriously their commitments to their partners, whoever they are, because if they're not, then it's not actually a covenant. The only true covenant is the one God has with us, and that one will always be fulfilled, because he always fulfills his promises.
Okay. Dear Frank, do you have any final questions?
No, thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah. Zach, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode? You're welcome.
Yeah, I just appreciate being here. I know how unique my voice is, and I know how unique my story is. Mm-hmm. And we're all in progress. We're all human beings in progress, and I am first and foremost still in progress as a Christian, as a human being. And I'm not perfect, and there's nothing, and I don't want to show up, and think, oh, well, he's side B, therefore he thinks he's better than the rest of us. Because I think moving from side A to side B, I feel as if there is a level of that. And it's like, no, I've just been convinced of a different argument, and I want to honor everyone's story. But this is my story, and mm-hmm. If it lands well, it lands well. If it doesn't land well, that's my cross I have to bear, and there's more discussion to come out of it.
Yeah. If anyone wants to connect with you, maybe online, is there a way they can connect with you?
I'm on Facebook, but I don't really want to be there anymore. I'm on Instagram.
Can we share your IG details in our show notes if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, of course. Totally.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your voice. You're welcome. And we hope more people walk your journey, I guess, but also that just we can keep talking about these important things as we follow God together. So
definitely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Thank you, Zach. Great to hear your story and your theological reflections. I look forward, hopefully we can also just keep in contact as we continue to be reflecting on the life God has called us to.
Me too.
Right, bye everybody. This podcast is fully supported by people like you who want to see it continue. If you like this podcast, first, please consider sharing it with a friend who might also like it. Referrals from others are the biggest way people find our podcast. And second, please consider supporting this podcast on Substack. Starting at $5 a month, you can ensure this podcast continues, and you'll also get access to our subscribers-only WhatsApp group for new kinship supporters. We'd love to hear from you as we continue to pursue diverse perspectives and nuanced conversations around sexuality, ethnicity, desire, and belonging in the kingdom of Christ.